Cal Chester's favorite lint roller and his Cal zone. That was his zone. And his favorite Human League record. And his favorite fretless bass.
Hi everyone, Anthony Fantano here, the internet's busiest music nerd, and it's time for a review of the new Florence and the Machine record. How big, how blue, how beautiful. Florence and the Machine is a UK-based art, chamber, and alternative pop outfit. This is their third full-length LP, and they are fronted by vocalist and songwriter Florence Welch, a woman whose voice I've always admired much more than her music. If you're a fan of this group, you already know that Florence's voice is bold, it's cutting, it's got a lot of power, it's got a lot of volume to it, and I would say personality as well. And I don't think this is the case on her debut. The instrumentation on her debut record was actually kind of quirky and had an organic quality to it sometimes. But as far as the sophomore record that Florence and the Machine put out, the instrumentation on this LP for me was just so overly dramatic and glitzy and sanitized, and in a sense bland as well. And I most definitely see that the band gives some pretty rousing performances with these sounds as well. I definitely see the appeal. Personally, I just prefer Florence and the Machine's debut LP over the sophomore record, but I did have some hope going into the latest album over here because I did like some of the singles I had heard. I wouldn't say this new album over here is exactly going back to the old days of Florence and the Machine, but the instrumentation, while it does still have a very clean, pristine mainstream appeal to it, it doesn't feel like it's trying to get so large and so overbearing that it's actually overshadowing the songs. And the songs are actually pretty succinctly and catchily written on this album, which was a really pleasant surprise. The hooks and the verse melodies on this record actually sting kind of hard sometimes. And I would say for the most part, the lyrics and the singing are just passionate and interesting enough to actually satisfy somebody who is as picky as me. I'm kind of reminded in a way how surprisingly good I thought the Brandon Flowers solo record was from a few years ago. With one cut after another on this record, we are getting these huge, massive, just punchily written choruses. Ship to wreck, that I built this ship to wreck. Or, what kind of man loves like this? Or Queen of Peace, or Delilah, where I especially love the lyrics on the hook of this track. Or the song Mother, which closes the whole record out. Again, these big, exciting choruses. Florence delivering these really impassioned vocal deliveries, and they are all on top of these sparkling bass, drums, guitars, occasionally some pianos and horns getting thrown in there as well. But again, I wouldn't exactly call the instrumentation on this record all that eclectic, maybe with the exception of like the closing track here, which feels kind of like it has a bit of a classic rock vibe to it, or the numerous layers of horns on the title track here. I would say that a lot of the time the instrumentation on this record is kind of like this reverby, clean, nondescript platform for Florence to kind of do her vocal thing on top of, which isn't necessarily a bad thing because when she is just kind of belting out these huge vocal lines, it doesn't sound that bad. However, I think the blind spot on this record is sort of in subtlety and intimacy. The subdued, quieter, slower, more slowed down tracks don't really feel that close at all. Really, they are kind of cold and distant, and don't really feature songs that are as memorable as a lot of the louder cuts here. They, for the most part, just kind of feel like these quiet intermissions just to provide some semblance of variety to the record. I think the only song on this record which comes off remotely intimate would be on the song Caught, which actually features some of the most lovely instrumentation on the entire record, as well as one of Florence's better vocal performances too. I mean, she just pulls me in really close on this track, and the groove is so easygoing, and the guitars on here are so warm, not really featuring that same kind of very pristine sheen that they have on a lot of other cuts here. This track, in a way, actually does remind me of the more organic vibe of the debut LP. So yeah, while there are a handful of very big tracks on here that I think are great, I think this record really could have used some variety or maybe just a little bit of restraint on some of these quieter tracks, or maybe just some catchier songwriting, or again, just more intimate, legitimately intimate moments. I feel like that's kind of an element that has been lost in Florence and the Machine's music ever since the sophomore record, where the presentation of the instrumentation and Florence's voice seems to have kind of reached up into the stratosphere to the point where there are just so few moments where the music actually feels down to earth in some kind of way. And I get that temptation to constantly hang up there because, I mean, Florence's voice allows her a certain level of emotional and voluminous power that few singers have, and it definitely sets her apart. But very quiet and intimate moments can be just as emotionally powerful, if not more, as evidenced on the song Caught. I just would have liked to have heard more of that side of Florence and the Machine on this record. Still though, for the most part, this is a very good pop record that I would recommend to anybody looking for a pretty straightforward, well-produced, very clean but well-written set of songs. I'm feeling a light decent 7 on this thing. Transition! If you've given this record a listen, what did you think of it? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Why? What do you think I should review next? And that's it. Anthony Fantano, Florence and the Machine, forever.